Dr. Umar, if you can show me any black person, I'll donate $1,000 to your school.
I don't understand. What's the purpose of this question?
I didn't understand the question.
No, the question is, do you know anybody that's black, that has black skin?
Absolutely. I know a lot of people who have jet black, blue, black, purple skin.
They go to the synagogue.
More. Yes, I do know people who are black. But more importantly than that, as the late, great Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad said, blackness is color, culture, consciousness, and a connection to the divine creator.
That's
I'm
right.
very much a proponent of self-identity and self-definition. I do not believe in using white people's interpretation of any term in order to govern my life. I make my own definitions. I don't use white people's definitions.
Okay, last thing. There's very dark-skinned brown people, but there's no black people. The only white people
That's not true at all.
Are albinos, and they're allergic to the sun. And white people are really pink. They're not white. They're pink. They're just the albinos.
Okay, so what's the purpose? I mean, is it the way that you describe yourself, or the word black? What is? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I'm a Negro.
Oh, now I understand.
And sometimes when I'm ignorant, I'm a need to grow.
Okay. All right. Hey, okay. I hear you.
And I'd like to find a way to get rid of racism. But just a little joke. The way I get rid of racism is I use an eraser. I erase it.
All right. That's cool.
No,
you
don't get rid of racism by changing words.
That's what I say. Yeah, semantics, man. It's still the same.
Looking for,
There's
not to say
no
this brother is doing that per se, but we're always looking for easy ways to solve major problems. The way you get rid of racism or oppression is the same way any group who has ever gotten rid of racism or oppression, and that is to destroy it. You don't get rid of racism by changing your name. That's the problem that we have. Everybody thinks if we call ourselves Indians, if we call ourselves Native Americans, if we call ourselves Aboriginals, if we call ourselves indigenous, if we call ourselves aliens, if we call ourselves this, if we call ourselves that, white people know exactly who you are. Everybody else knows exactly who you are. So if you want to play political Scrabble and keep changing what you call yourself every 10 years as if that is a measure of progress, you're going to be changing your name for the next 5,000 years. Words do not change conditions. Actions change conditions.
No matter what you call yourself, that's right.
We have to end oppression. You don't end oppression by changing your name.
Last thing I want, the word Africa is English, but the real name for Africa is a Cuban.
Okay, but still semantics.
And you are incorrect once again. The word Africa is an indigenous Aboriginal name used on the continent by our Nile Valley ancestors. This has been proven over and over again. The three syllables in the word Africa, Af-Ra-Ka, exist in the phonology of Nile Valley civilization. And we all know that Ra is God and Ka is spirit. The late great doctor, his name is Ivan Van Sertima, even spoke to this and proved in his research that Africa was a modification of a more ancient word Afrika, which means birth of mankind. The word Africa did not come from white folks. It came from our ancestors. It is older than the word Moor. It is older than the word Indian. It is older than the word Native American. It is older than the word Aboriginal. It is older than the word indigenous. Every word that y'all have come up with to describe African people with, Africa is older than every single word y'all use. You can fool some of the people all the time, and you can fool all the people some of the time. You can't fool the Prince of Pan-Africanism any of the time.
Do you think that every Negro should at least support one Negro organization to uplift our people, like the NAACP or NCOBRA? Or
the NAACP is not a black organization. It was founded by whites, and it's controlled by whites, and it's funded by whites. So the NAACP does not qualify as a black organization.
You're right. UNIACL does.
All right, thank you so much, caller.
Intellectual masturbation is one of those unnecessary detours we took, Father David, in the 21st century when we should have stayed focused on solving problems, we got caught up into intellectual masturbation. And some of us are still stuck on the intellectual masturbation plantation. In fact, I would argue that 85% of the so-called black conscious community, aka the fake woke society, 85% of the people in it are still on the intellectual masturbation plantation. All they want to discuss is ideas and history and paperwork and concepts. They don't ever get off the internet. They don't ever get off YouTube. They don't ever get off social media, come out into the real world and try to solve a real problem.
Because I don't understand how in 2022, how anyone would still want to consider themselves to be a Negro. But hey, to each his own.
Talk about the name Africa. I followed that name, and I'm not an expert at it, but I don't like what I find. I know that there was a man named Africanus, black man, and he received the name Africanus. I thought he was the first one with the name Africa, but I assumed that it came from. I assumed that
the word Africa wasn't used.
I'm trying to think about something. I assumed that the name came from. That's how he got it. Anyway, I want to know what language, what black. Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
I want to know what black language gave birth to the word Africa.
I already explained that. I already explained that earlier in my answer. In the original phonology of Nile Valley culture, all three syllables of the word Afrika already existed prior to any white man coming into the continent. The word Ra means God. That's ancient Kemetic knowledge and language and vocabulary. The word Ka means spirit. That's ancient African spiritual culture on the Nile Valley. So I think we already know. If you break the word down, you can see the phonemes in the word, and all three of the phonemes of our ancient Kemetic origin.
So in other words, there wasn't.
Go ahead.
So in other words, there was never a name. There was various syllables. Yes, I got that. But no one ever put those 3 syllables or 4 syllables together with a name.
Yes, he just said Afrika.
So we did have it. What language was that?
I just said it. I'm not going to repeat it again. But what I would do is recommend people study.
And actually, you know, they have thousands of different languages in Africa.
There was never just one name to describe the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Africa was a collection of kingdoms, and it still is, of kingdoms. And so every kingdom had their own name for the continent.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never a ruling, predominant name.
Mm-hmm.
There was plenty of them. Alkebulan, Africa, Kemet, Tamari, Tanahisi. There's been plenty of names used to describe the continent. Africa is a very large place.
Mm-hmm.
Manamutapa, very, very, very a large collection of names, but Africa was one of them. And who is, Baba David, I don't know if you remember, who's the white man, the white scholar of Egyptian history who wrote all those books? E. Wallace Budge, I believe it's E. Wallace Budge, but there's one other one as well.
Mm-hmm.
In their work, either E. Wallace Budge or the other European, he also traced the phonology and etymology of the word Africa, and it took him straight back to Kemetic culture and science. And the same thing happened for Dr. Ivan van Sertima and many others. So you have plenty of experts on the history of Nile Valley culture, black and white, who have all traced the word Africa to the earliest of civilizations and the earliest of languages. So when you Africa does not come from white people.
When you said
our ancestors.
When you said etymology, was you talking about Dr. Burton?
No, not Dr. Burton.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of, he may have, but I'm speaking of the very well-known and well-published Egyptian scholars. Dr. Ivan van Sertima is a personal favorite of mine. That's why I always use his name. And, of course, he even found an older version of Africa, which is Afrika, which means birth of man. And when you look at the other scholars, they also trace it to the Afrika of Kemetic phonology. And, of course, Ra is God, so the name, the Kemetic name for the creator is in the heart of the name. I don't know why we go right past that. You have Ra right in the middle of the name. And then you have Ka, which is spirit, to end the name. So I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand that the word is African when all the syllables of the word is African.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no harm with what DrUMAR is talking about with Africa. I don't disrespect them, and matter of fact, I respect them a lot. But before it became Africa, it was called Akenbu land. My source, because I've been studying this a long time because I'm doing my family tree. But anyway, I've been studying this, and it is not after. It was named after a white dude. I forgot, he was high up in England.
It was not. It was not named after a white man. That is incorrect.
Would you please let me give you reference? Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay. I just want to put this information out there.
Okay. All right. We could have a dialogue. You tell us your point.
My source is the World Atlas. You can go on the
oh my
phone
goodness!
Who wrote the World Atlas? That's not an African-centered publication.
And Bobby, right?
Here's the issue, Bobby David. I want to make sure we're clear on the issue. You know, and this is a very timely conversation since we'll be celebrating the Honorable Marcus Garvey's 135th solar return on the 17th. After Garvey was deported from America, many of the copycat organizations that came in the aftermath of Garvey, although they copied Garvey's process, protocol, format, and program, they took our people away from African consciousness into a religious and anti-African frame of mind that many of our people are still in today. Many of us need to believe that Africa is not the origin of man. Many of us need to believe that Africa is not an indigenous name of our people. We need to believe this because we've been taught this by these post-Garvey movements. Many of us have been raised to disdain the word Africa and all things African. And that's why even when you tell people to go and do some real research, go study the grandmaster teachers of our history and culture, the Ivan Van Sertima's, the Dr. Ben, the George G.M. James, the Chancellor Williams, the George Jacksons, you will see the history right there. But it's very common sense if you have any. Again, the syllables are all Nile Valley civilization syllables. They all existed in the Kemetic tongue. So there's nothing to debate. The reason why people have so much cognitive dissonance over the topic is they have been conditioned by people who didn't know what they were talking about and people who hated being African. Hated being African. Told our people they was from Asia. Told our people they was from Morocco. Told our people they was from North Africa. Told our people they was from Mexico and all these other places. And a lot of people talking, they come from that zeitgeist. They come from that generation where things African were disdained for other names and identities. The truth is the truth. And the truth doesn't need a defense. Go and study the work. Look up the researchers from our culture who have went through the labor to prove and verify that the name Africa is an ancient name. I mean, my goodness, the name of God in Kemetic culture, Ra, is in the name. Ka, the name for spirit, is in the name. I mean, you don't have to be an etymologist. You don't have to be a historian. You don't have to be a cultural anthropologist to have enough common sense to say that if every syllable in the word is from ancient African civilization, then it's quite possible that the word itself is also from ancient African civilization. But we want to discredit all things African because that's what we were taught by these anti-African leaders who came on the scene after Garvey's deportation.
Not only anti-African leaders, but book writers, book publishers. What makes us think they're going to put the truth in their books? To talk about, I got my information from the encyclopedia. Like the encyclopedia hasn't lied to us.
Absolutely. And even now, Baba David, when you look across what is called the Black consciousness community, the fake woke society, I am a minority. There are few Pan-Africanists who have a well-recognized name in the conscious community. 99% of all the brothers and sisters in black consciousness, they do not identify as being African. They are something else. So although I am the biggest name and the strongest name and the most popular name, I am a minority, though, because most of them are pushing something other than African consciousness. And that's why the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and his work is so needed at this time for our people, because the self-hatred that the white man injected into the black man still has us hating all things African, to include the word Africa itself.